Hello, my name is Patrick Halladay from the Vermont Agency of Education. Thank you for your interest in the Vermont State Plan for the Every Student Succeeds Act. This presentation is intended to provide an overview of the lengthy and somewhat complicated accountability section. Please note that there are several subsections under accountability that also have their own presentations, which will go into these in more detail. And please remember that for this and all presentations are intended to provide an orientation to the section of the state plan. We encourage you to make public comment. However, if you're interested in providing public comment, we strongly encourage you to read the section in its entirety in order to fully understand the decisions outlined in the presentation. This presentation has two main parts. First is an overview of the goals of the Vermont accountability system. And the second is to orient you to the subsections of the accountability section, each which have their own additional presentation that you can explore if you'd like more detail. There are a handful of goals that rise to the top when thinking of the Vermont accountability system. First, we want a system that supports all of Vermont's students and schools, while making sure that we're focusing on reducing equity gaps that impact our historically marginalized students. We want to meet the requirements of the Every Student Succeeds Act while also making sure that we're reflecting the goals and requirements of the Vermont policy. To that end, we want to make sure that our state and federal systems are not duplicative of each other but work in tandem. We want to make sure that we're providing schools and supervisory districts with reliable, relevant data that can provide the foundation for continuous improvement efforts. And finally, we want to identify and support the education systems that are most struggling to meet performance measures. As I mentioned at the outset, this presentation is intended to be an overview of the entire accountability system. There are several subsections of the accountability system, and we encourage you to look at the four presentations that we've provided that map onto the four subsections within that plan. The first of those are looking at questions of student group and N size. That presentation will address the questions in more detail of what groups of students will Vermont include in an accountability system, and how big does a student group need to be before an accountability determination can be made. The second sub-presentation looks at academic measures and targets. It asks the questions of what measures of performance will we include in our system, and what will the performance measures be for those targets. The third section considers the weighting of the identified measures and addresses the question of how those measures will be weighted relative to each other. Our final sub-presentation looks at our transition plan and outlines how we'll be moving from our current accountability model to the one being proposed here. So again, to review, there are four additional sub-presentations that you can go to if you'd like to get more information: student group and N size, academic measures and targets, format and weighting of measures, and the transition plan. The latter half of the accountability section of the Vermont State Plan considers the continuous improvement process. If you're interested in learning more about that, please continue on to the next presentation. In that, we'll be talking about how schools are identified for comprehensive and targeted supports, what comprehensive and targeted supports mean, and how they ultimately exit identification. Additionally, that section will look at the continuous improvement in technical assistance and what supports do identified schools receive. Again, my name is Patrick Halladay. Please feel free to contact either me or my colleague Chris Case by phone or email. Again, we thank you for your interest in the Vermont State Plan and look forward to reviewing your public comment.